Hello and welcome to the video. This is about this model here. This is the Crocodile Baby, or Baby Crocodile, from GEPRC. Now, I have done a number of reviews on GEPRC models and they are now one of my top vendors in terms of making stuff. The stuff that they produce is really impressive. And this is a slightly different model from all the other kind of 5-inch racing quads and whoops that you're probably seeing in lots of other videos. This is a little 4-inch model and it has a GPS on the back. It has the Cadix Vista system in it, so it works with the GGI, although you can get it with regular analog FPV stuff as well. But the thing that's really interesting about this is the battery. The battery, I'll try and do it so it's not shiny, is a 3000 milliamp hour 4S lithium ion. The total weight with the battery is 360 grams, and that means that although this is a little small lightweight model, it'll fly for the best part of half an hour. Now, what I'll do in the video, standard stuff, I'll do an unboxing, show you the Betaflight setup, show you how it flies and do a summary at the end. I'll pop time codes down below. So let me go through some of the specs as I take this Crocodile Baby apart. The frame itself is available to order separately. It's called the GEPRC CB4. I guess that's because it's a 4-inch frame. Wheelbase 174mm, top plate's 1.5mm, bottom plate on this little thing is 2mm, and the arms are 2.5mm. The props are GEMFAN 4024 and it has 2750 kV GR1404 motors on it. But as you can see here, the model has arrived, as all the other GEPRC models seems to come, in the heat shrink plastic. Now inside this little cardboard box is obviously a battery. Again, this is a 4S 3000 milliamp hour lithium ion pack, and on the model it'll take it up with a battery strap to 360 grams. The battery strap that comes with the battery is the nicest in the kit. You can also run it with a lithium ion battery, just have to be careful of the weight. A couple of extra things in my box that I've ordered with mine. First one is the Super Buzzer, relatively cheap and cheerful battery backed up buzzer with an upright LED, and this is also the GEPRC smoke stopper, which again is a nice cheap and cheerful little smoke stopper if you're not sure that everything that's wired up on the model isn't going to be happy. I'll put links to all that down below as well. The smart buzzer in particular is quite a nice piece of kit. Inside this bag is pretty much everything else that we're going to need for the build, with the exception of props. So let me cut open the model and kind of give you a first look around and how it arrives. And once I've managed to peel all of that off, the next job then is to get a pair of snips, undo the cable tie holding the antenna for the Vista unit, and put that into the back in the same 3D printed piece that's holding the GPS into position. But as I'm handling this, one of the things I'm impressed with is how solid it feels, despite the fact it's a 4-inch model. There's some really cute touches in the way that it's put together. And the thing that I like is the way that the Vista is attached to the top plate, and the flight controller, which is an all-in-one flight controller, a very cute thing. It's the flight controller, but also the ESCs and everything is at the bottom. At the back, we have the smart buzzer, and you can easily access the little button to turn it off if you accidentally trigger it, powered by the 5 volts on the craft, so it'll also be tripped by the 5 volts plugging it into the computer. And there is absolutely tons of room because of some really smart choices with the way it's laid out. Undoing 6 screws will allow you to take it off the top, and you can see the way that it's all soldered together. So my next job is to get the screws out of the bag along with the props. There is a complete full set of spare props in here as well, and get those on, and then we're going to be ready to plug it into Betaflight and do some testing. If you're not sure what you're doing, I would probably leave the fitting of the props until the very last step. Nice to see a spare arm for both the rear and front in the bag as well, and you do get more screws than you need to put the props on, and you also get the little foam pieces to go underneath. I'm a big fan of too. So let me plug this into Betaflight and show you how it comes straight out the box. So we'll click on connect and put it into advanced mode. Everything looks really nice. See, it's a nice current version of Betaflight, F4 based flight controller. Ports look like this. MSP on UART1 for the telemetry, and the GPS is on soft serial. And that's about it. The UART2 is actually being used for the S-Bus input from the DJI kit. Configuration looks like this. D-shots, nothing's really reversed, no real surprises in here at all. 8K and 4K loop frequencies, and the CPU is just ticking over, which is good to see. Power and battery looks like that, and then if I go into the failsafe, it's set to GPS rescue, which is what you want. And then these are all the PID tunings. Again, I'll do a dump and diff down in the description if you want to download and have a look. It's nice to see a smaller quad using a very late version of Betaflight. Receiver, nothing exciting in there, pretty standard stuff. Modes were set up quite nicely. Again, the arming was set to be armed in a low position, which is kind of one of the few things that I changed, and then moved a couple of things around. Obviously, if you're using something like a DJI FPV controller like I am with it, then it's just a case of trying to figure out which switches you like the look of and which auxiliary channels those are and moving them around. So I always recommend connecting this via the USB cable and having a bit of a tweak. But it is nice to see that GPS rescue is set up in here, as well as activation of that nice loud beeper too, which is very handy and does act as a lost model alarm. Even when you unplug the battery or if the battery gets ejected, that beeper at the back can still sound. On-screen display needed a few things tweaked and moved about to work properly and look good in the DJI goggles. And that was about everything. So really good setup out of the box. Only a couple of things to play with, and the majority of those things are to do with how you want your on-screen display and how you want your modes to work. So this footage was taken on a pretty overcast day. Autumn is definitely here in the UK. There's a little bit of a breeze, but hopefully what you can see here is the image is beautifully stable, and there are no props in the image as well. Thanks to the slightly splayed arms at the front, they're well out of the way. Now this is comfortably motoring around at about a third throttle, and this is probably 15 to 20 miles an hour, just gently exploring the countryside. And this is what this model is particularly good for. If you want a small, lightweight, portable platform that's got a decent amount of flight time that allows you to capture footage like this and get in and out of trouble relatively quickly, this is a really, really good option. Crank it over and you can comfortably get 50, 60 miles an hour at top speed. Footage here I'm probably running at about 35, 37 miles an hour, but I can see easily enough to zoom over the trees, over the telegraph poles and everything, and just get some really, really stunning footage. And it's fantastic that such a small model allows me to fly like this and have such a lot of fun and not have to land after 8 or 9 minutes. The noise from it isn't particularly bad as well. It's the same kind of noise you'll get from a regular 5-inch quad, rather than that racket that you can sometimes get from those kind of cine whoops. But hopefully you can see here how nice it is to fly and how well it behaves, even in this little bit of wind. So in summary, what do I think? Well, once again, GEPRC have made a very interesting, very good little model. The frame is fantastic, and I like the way that it's been put together, the quality of the soldering and the build considerations, how it's all done with things like the Vista unit being actually mounted to the top plate, the flight controller to the bottom, and using a flight controller that has the ESCs and everything on one board makes for a super neat build, even though it's a relatively small model. Nice 4-inch quad, so a good balance of efficiency, and the clever use of the frame means that the weight has been kept down. I like the fact that everything's in the box. GPS is here, the antenna, you have spare arms, you have spare props, you have all the tools you need to connect everything up, even an Allen key and spare screws for things like the motors. love the fact that even on the screws they put a little bit of dab of thread lock as well, just to stop them winding out when you're flying around. And there's only a couple of things to be aware of, really. The name's weird, Crocodile Baby. I'm guessing it's because they have a bigger version called the Crocodile, and this is kind of the small version of it. The bigger Crocodile is quite a slammed, very thin frame layout. Obviously, because it's the Vista-based unit, there's no recording locally, so you're limited to 720p recording in the goggles, but it is very compact and portable. So you might want a bigger model if, for example, you wanted to fit something like a GoPro. There's probably other options for that. But what's really impressed me with this is the fact that GEPRC are not just making whoops and 5-inch racing quads, they're thinking outside the box a little bit. For pilots like me that actually like exploring with the DJI equipment and flying around, this is great. It's very small and lightweight. The efficiency of the 4-inch props without the shrouds means it's a little bit quieter, and with the battery I'm getting seriously long flight times. I think you could probably bet on about 25 minutes of flying before you get into trouble. There are a number of things on this model that show that GEPRC haven't just thrown this together, they've really thought about it. Now, I've already said this is kind of an endurance quad, and potentially if you increase the power on your DJI system, or you use a crossfire receiver and a high-powered video transmitter with good antennas, you can get well beyond line of sight and go for a very long way. And that's really handy because if you have 28 minutes of flight time, then you potentially can go kind of 12-13 minutes in one way and 12-13 minutes the other way, and you can cover quite a lot of ground and you can do some great amount of exploring. And a couple of things on here that shows they have thought about it. First of all, the GPS at the back, that's not unique to this. The GPS is handy for the goggles so you can see the distance and direction to home. If you're flying in a new location that you're not completely familiar with aerially, then that will tell you how to get back to yourself. Also gives you the adhere switch for Betaflight to try and fly it back. And you also have the new GEPRC buzzer in the back at the bottom, and that will powered by its own little lithium-ion battery, and that will continue to beep, and the light will flash if something horrible happens. And that was probably the hardest thing for me, figuring out how to turn that off. There is a little black button at the back that you press to silence it. But that's going to be really handy if it comes down a field away and you can't quite find it. You just listen for the beep and look for the very bright red flashing light that's on there too. In fact, this is something that I've got the extra one for. There's another quad that I would like to add this kind of buzzer to give me that oh dear ability to find it. Because if it did come down, maybe you were flying away and you trying to fly into the next field and you clipped a branch or something and flipped into the grass, that would really help you find it an awful lot quicker. So for those of you that are looking for a smaller, lightweight quadcopter that's easier to transport, that flies for more than 8-12 minutes at a time, that will work with something like DJI systems or analog, this is the best option that I have seen for that. So for me, using the pill system again, for those of you that want that kind of quadcopter, this gets 5 out of 5. However, if you were looking to put things like GoPro on it and those kind of things, then a bigger model is probably going to be a better bet. Thank you for watching my video and watching right to the very end. If you want to find out what I'm currently working on, you can follow me on social media by searching for Painless360 in the usual places. If you'd like to become part of the inner circle, then you can become a Patreon. Details are in the description and you get lots of additional benefits. Check out the playlist section on the channel too. I organise all of my videos into playlists and it's called something like Introduction to or for Beginners. All of the content is aimed so that you can start at the very beginning and it teaches you that subject, starting with simple principles and moving up to teach you everything you need to know.